Hello, everyone. Welcome to this third match in the International Reparations Debate Competition for 2025. My name is Jermaine Barrett, and I will be your chair adjudicator for this match. With me on the panel are two distinguished gentlemen, and I'll allow them now to introduce themselves.
Good day, everyone. My name is Joshua Atkins. I serve as the Deputy Programs Manager within JADE. I look forward to an exciting clash of ideas today, especially because I know that the teams have prepared and have prepared vigorously for this debate because it demands such a preparation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew White. I work in the Wellness Department at JADE, and I'll be serving as another wing adjudicator on this panel. I really hope to hear a riveting debate, and I'm sure I will hear that. Best of luck to both teams.
All right. Thank you so very much, Matthew and Joshua. We are grateful that we are joined by Holy Childhood High School out of Jamaica. Unfortunately, their opponents, Presentation College out of Trinidad, were not able to make it for this debate match. But we will proceed nevertheless, hearing the speeches from Holy Childhood High School. And as the adjudicators, we will ask at various points during their speeches, we'll ask some points of information to kind of, give them a little challenge. Nevertheless, they will advance automatically. All right. So with that said, we are ready to get started. At this time, I call on the first speaker from Team Holy Childhood, representing the proposition side, to open the debate. And of course, the motion that they'll be debating, supporting the motion, is this House believes that enslaved people rather are the were the primary agents of their freedom. All right, so that is the motion. Again, this House believes that enslaved people were the primary agents of their freedom. And this time I call upon the first speaker from Team Proposition to open the debate.
Good afternoon again, everyone. My name is Tishane Manant. I'm from Holy Child, and I'm the first speaker. So I should just start whenever.
Yes, you may begin.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, adjudicators, colleagues, members of the government, other members of the House, a pleasant afternoon. I am Tishane Manant. Mr. Speaker, the proposition hereby restates the motion. This House believed that enslaved people were the primary agents of their own freedom. As leader of the proposition, the task is mine to scrutinize the main terms in today's motion. These are enslaved, primary agents, and freedom. According to the Cambridge Dictionary, enslave refers to the act of controlling someone's actions, thoughts, or life completely. Primary agents, as defined by Library 5 is an individual or group that has a significant influence on a person's interactions, beliefs, and attitudes. Freedom is the right of being able to do, say, think, according to the Cambridge Dictionary. But, Mr. Speaker, before we even begin dissecting the facts of this motion, we must first ask ourselves, why, after centuries of suffering, must we continue to credit our victories to those who oppressed us? Is that not precisely what the opposition seeks to argue? That the very individuals who brutalized and dehumanized enslaved people were somehow the architects of their liberation? This claim is not just deeply flawed, it is an insult to the spirit of those who fought and died for their freedom. It is a painful reflection of the psychological chains who slavery forged for over 400 years, a mindset that seeks to erase the fierce resistance and ultimate triumph of the enslaved themselves. History is replete with examples of enslaved people as the architects of their own freedom, and today I will speak of only three, but these three alone should take us to our core. To begin with, the Haitian Revolution, one of the most successful and largest slave rebellions in the Western region, inspired by another revolt called the French Revolution. According to blackpast.org, in the 18th century, Saint Domingue, as Haiti was then known, had become France's wealthiest
Point of information.
Go ahead.
what is the standard that you're using to determine that enslaved Africans were in fact the primary chief agents for their own freedom?
The standard is that based on history and past things, we can see that the only way that enslaved persons gained their freedom was due to rebellions and revolutions and fighting and petitioning. It was no other situation. Continuing. This wealth came largely because of the island's production of sugar, cotton, generated by an enslaved labor force. Enslaved Africans in Saint Domingue launched a massive uprising led by figures like Dottie Bookman, where they burned plantations and killed slave owners. The revolution in Haiti caused the independence of the first ever Caribbean country. That concept, in and of itself, provides all the evidence that enslaved people were their own saviors. Their independence was not a negotiated emancipation, but a military victory achieved through the efforts of the enslaved. Secondly, the British abolition of slavery, the monumental and long-awaited era that marked a turning point in the fight for freedom and human rights. This abolition was not simply a result of British moral awakening, but was largely influenced by continuous uprisings and resistance by enslaved people. The Baptist War in 1831, led by Samuel Sharp, which played a key role in convincing Britain that slavery was unsustainable. The British realized that the enslaved were angry. They were tired of experiencing the hardships of life. According to Eric Williams, a renowned
Point
Trinidadian
of
historian,
information.
denied by the late 18th and 19th centuries, British merchants and landowners began to see the economic inefficiencies and costs associated with slavery, including the threat of insurrection and the logistics of controlling large numbers of enslaved people. The economic decline due to decreasing productivity, combined with the pressure of the abolitionist movement and the realization of the inherent inefficiencies in maintaining slavery, played the final straw for the British decision to abolish slavery and not of their own autonomy.
Point of information.
Denied. Finally,
You have
the
to take
use.
the point of information.
I have to take it? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So how do you contend with the idea that slavery became unprofitable, that resulting in there no longer being an incentive to perpetuate the system or institution that was slavery? How do you contend with the idea that slavery became unprofitable, as according to Eric Williams, the historian that you just named, that slavery became no longer profitable, and that's why enslavement was just, there was no incentive to continue it?
The British focused largely on producing profit and increasing their economic growth. So therefore, if they realize that the enslaved are not working anymore, they're working at slow paces and they're not working as they used to, then eventually they'd realize that there's no point in keeping enslaved people anymore if they're not earning profit at the same time. So they realize that it's a loss and they need to gain profit. So they cut the loss so that they can continue on with a different method or different ways of continuing. So finally, the use of petitions and advocacy served as another instance in which enslaved people tried to gain autonomy for themselves. Legal action required usage of scholarly knowledge, which was unattainable by slaves. Therefore, oftentimes they had to craft using the support of sympathetic, local free people or religious groups, aimed to protest the brutal conditions on plantations and demand better treatment or limited concessions from colonial authorities. Although these repetitions really led directly to freedom under the rigid colonial legal system, they contributed to a growing awareness and questioning of the institution of slavery. The oppressors were merely catalysts and not the cause. Their courage ignited a revolution of hope, a blazing testimony that even in the darkest chains of oppression, the human spirit rises. Their voices, once silenced by tyranny, now echo through history, reminding us that freedom is never gained, but fought for, claimed, and forever cherished. I rest my case.
We thank the first speaker from the proposition team, Holy Childhood, and now we move on to the second speaker, also from that team.
Good afternoon. My name is Dejane Walsh, and I am the second speaker representing the Holy Childhood High School. The shackles of oppression were not unlocked by the hands of the oppressor. They were shattered by the unwavering will of the oppressed. History often remembers those in power, but it neglects the true force behind change, the people who fought, resisted, and sacrificed to reshape their world. This house must not be fooled by the idea that enslaved people were simply granted their freedom, like a handout from a benevolent master. No, enslaved people took their freedom. They clawed for it with bloodied hands, with battered feet that ran toward a hope that they did not know exists, and with voices that refused to be silenced. Their resistance, their unrelenting defiance, and their sheer human will broke the system from within. Without their actions, without these uprisings, and without their fights and sacrifices, there would have been no abolition, no emancipation, and certainly no free Caribbean as we know and live in today. Our first speaker has already laid the foundation, demonstrating how enslaved people through advocacy, petitions, and abolitionist movements actively demanded their own freedom. Furthermore, they have illustrated how Britain's abolition of slavery was not an act of pure goodwill, but a forced response to the enslaved disrupting
Point
the
of
system.
information.
Accepted.
Would you not agree that abolition would not have been achieved without the active and persistent efforts of white men like William Wilberforce in the UK and the UK Parliament at large voting in favor of it,
I'm
constituted
sorry, I'm not
exclusively
hearing
of
you.
whites? Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Yes, I'm asking, would you not agree that abolition would not have been achieved without the active and persistent efforts of white British men like William Wilberforce, who agitated the British Parliament and got them to pass the Abolition Act?
I do agree with your statement to an extent. However, you do have to remember they did not just get up and say, let's make the change. They obviously saw a problem, which was the Africans are the enslaved in this case, bringing forth their problems and voicing their opinions and resistance and being oppressed, hence why they began to do anything in the first place. So it still goes back rather to the enslaved and to what they would have done to call or to bring forth the attention of the white legislators and people. May I continue?
Yes, you may.
Okay, now let us dig deeper into this reality. What does true agency look like? It is not just war and rebellion. It is in quiet acts of defiance, in the endurance of people who refuse to be broken. It is the maroon communities who refuse to kneel. In Jamaica, Suriname, and Dominica, enslaved people ran into mountains, built settlements, and waged guerrilla warfare against colonial forces. These were not passive victims. These were warriors who freed themselves, carved new lives in the wild, and forced colonial authorities into uneasy peace treaties.
Point of information.
Accepted.
Yeah, so you've described to me what agency looks like to the slaves, but comparing that to the agency of the non-profitability of slavery and the agency of white persons in England, how can you say that the slaves were the primary agents of their own freedom?
I heard the first half of that statement, but not the last half. Can you repeat, please?
Sorry. So yes, you've described to me what agency looks like amongst the slaves, but comparing that to the agency of the non-profitability of slavery and the agency of the white persons in England, how can you say that the slaves were the primary agents? What is the comparative nature between them?
Well, the fact that they did not purely wait until these white persons in England came forward. They took things upon their hands. They found ways to still preserve their culture despite the system of oppression that they were put in, and they found ways to voice their opinions by even learning the language of their colonial oppressors. So I definitely believe the enslaved were still the primary agents of their own freedom. Can I continue now?
Yes, you may.
That is agency, taking control of their fate rather than waiting for colonial powers to decide it for them. One of the most formidable examples is Nanny of the Maroons, who led her people in relentless guerrilla warfare against the British in Jamaica. She orchestrated ambush, trained warriors, and used the land as a weapon. The Maroons did not just fight, they survived. They adapted and they forced their oppressors into surrender. That is the essence of resistance. What does pursuit of freedom look like? It is in their ability to preserve culture and identity despite brutal suppression. Many enslaved people were forbidden to read or write, yet they learned English and other colonial languages to communicate, to trade, and to advocate for their rights. They passed down African traditions in music, storytelling, popular Anansi, and spiritual practices, holding on to the essence of who they were, even as their oppressors tried to strip that away. That is resistance. What does resistance look like? It is those who choose dignity over subjugation. Thus have some found ways to buy their own freedom against impossible odds. Others made the ultimate sacrifice, rejecting a life in chain altogether. It is the countless enslaved people who left from ships during the Middle Passage, refusing to be dehumanized. It is the mothers in Barbados and Jamaica who killed their own children so that they would never know the horrors of slavery. It is the story of Lover's Leap, where two enslaved lovers in Jamaica chose to jump to their deaths rather than to be separated and forced into further suffering. It is those who poisoned their enslavers, burned plantations to the ground, and fought back at any cost. Now that is agency. Now, our oppression, well, if they were here, might come with arguments like that abolition was penned into existence by white legislators. But I ask you this, would those laws have ever been written if enslaved people had simply accepted their fate? Would abolition have ever come if plantations had remained profitable? If enslaved people had continued to work without resistance? The truth is simple. Enslaved people forced the world to acknowledge their humanity, hence bringing them their own freedom. And so, members
All
of
right,
the peoples.
time, speaker. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much for that speech. With that, we are going to pause now for 1 minute. And at the end of the minute, we will invite the third speaker from Holy Childhood High School to present their speech. We would advise that the third speaker provide additional responses to the points of information that have been asked, and also to summarize the case presented so far by their previous two speakers. All right, so your 1 minute has elapsed. And so at this time, I invite the third speaker from Holy Childhood High School proposing the motion. It's now your turn to provide that final speech rather on behalf of your team. Third speaker, are you ready? Holy Childhood, are you ready? Okay. All right, so the Holy Childhood team seems to be having a little technical challenge, so we're going to wait. We're waiting a while to see if she can get back online and proceed with the debate.
Can
Can I be heard?
Yes, you can start from the top. We weren't hearing you before.
Okay, sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Janae Reed from the Holy Child High School, and I will be your government member and third speaker in today's debate. Can I be heard?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Thank you. Esteemed judges, respected members of the opposition, and valued audience, good afternoon. I, Janae Reed from the Holy Child High School, am here before you today in firm affirmation of the resolution. This House believes that enslaved people were the primary agents of their own freedom. The Oxford Dictionary defines freedom as the state or fact of being free from servitude, constraint, and inhibition. It was this yearn for freedom, the right to make decisions for themselves, that catalyzed the actions of the enslaved people, which resulted in the legislation of the colonial government legally abolishing slavery. I believe that ignorance is a bliss. It only acts as a means creating temporary comfort to those that refuse to acknowledge the reality of things. We need to refrain from the traditional representation of slavery, moving from the portrayal of the enslaved people as people who were passive victims of this system. There needs to be acknowledgement of the brutality of the system of slavery, and we must recognize the resilience and determination of the enslaved people to achieve their freedom. They were not powerless recipients of oppression. They were active participants of their own liberation. To give credit to the oppressors for the enslaved people's achievement is a dull-witted, ignorant, and foolish act. We were taught in Caribbean history class that the Caribbean system of slavery was exceptionally brutal, with high mortality rates and extreme forms of punishment. This level of oppression made resistance extremely difficult. However, being the persistent people that they were, the enslaved people fought for their freedom. The opposition would have attempted to narrowly define primary agents as solely those who enacted legal changes. However, this ignores the foundational role of the enslaved in creating the very conditions that made those changes possible. Firstly, the enslaved people showcased resistance on a daily basis. Some of these many acts of resistance included sabotaging their work equipment and slowing down production in order to preserve their culture. They constantly fought against a system established to dehumanize them. They were subjected to treatment akin to that of an animal. These acts were seeds of rebellions planted in the fertile soil of resilience against oppression. Secondly, the courageous acts to preserve their culture was a powerful declaration of the urge to obtain self-governance and freedom. By maintaining and adapting cultural traditions, including music, oral storytelling, and communal practices, enslaved people preserved their heritage and fostered a sense of identity and community. This cultural resilience served as a form of resistance against dehumanization. Thirdly, it would be argued by the opposition that the European powers were the ones to legally abolish slavery, deeming them to be the primary agents of enslaved people's freedom. Though I agree that the oppressive colonial powers legally abolished slavery, the slavery system, but think of it this way. Who set that system up? These European powers created systems to dehumanize the enslaved people for profit and economic gain. Obviously, they played a part in legally abolishing slavery. They were the ones that established the system. They were the oppressors that led the enslaved people to resist and rebel because of their yearn for the basic rights, for the basic human rights that were stripped from them, that were stripped from their hands overnight. Their resistance acted as a stimulus, with the response being the colonial powers legally abolishing slavery. To suggest that the enslaved people were not the primary agents of their own freedom is to lessen their agency, to erase their struggle, and to deny their humanity. It is to continue a narrative that deemed them as passive victims rather than active participants in their own freedom. The very fact that the enslaved people had to fight so hard, that they have to endure such unimaginable and inhumane suffering, highlights the profound injustice of slavery. But within that struggle, we find the enduring power of the enslaved people, the unwavering belief in attaining freedom, and the undeniable truth that enslaved people were indeed the primary agents of their own freedom. Therefore, I urge you to affirm this resolution, to recognize the agency of enslaved people, and to honor their legacy of resistance. And ask yourself this: why do we always give credit for our victories to those who oppress us? As the famous musician Bob Marley once said, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Use that as a guide to carry you to the right house. Instead of agreeing with the opposition that colonial forces, powers, and abolitionists were the reasons for the enslaved people's freedom. Let us honor the legacy of the enslaved, whose continuous resistance achieved their own liberation. And in turn, the colonizing countries of the past must repatriate the region for the inhumane, unimaginable, and dehumanizing experiences of our ancestors. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that speech. And that brings our debate to an end. We are going to leave to deliberate. And when we return, we'll come with, I think, the feedback, because you know already what the result is, that Holy Child will advance to the grand final, not the grand final, sorry, round two rather of this competition, because of the absence of their opponent's presentation college out of Trinidad and Tobago. All right, so we will be back with you shortly.
My name is Tishani Minot.
My name is Dejanay Walsh.
My name is Dejanay Johnson.
My name is Jenny Reed.
My name is Brandon Nelson.
And we are representing the Holy Child High School.
Reparations matters to us because it holds past oppressors accountable for their actions, while also shows their willingness to correct these past grievances.
So choose us, because justice begins with bold voices and we are ready to be heard.
Breaking news! After a decade-long battle fought by the CARICOM Reparations Commission against the European powers, the people have finally got it. Here's Vaishnava on the scene.
Good day, sir. The Jews got their reparations. The Japanese got their reparations. How do you feel to have finally received your well-deserved reparations?
This investment will spur development, bring freedom to Haiti, and justice to our ancestors. Justice!
This is Janak Megu from PCC News, signing off.
The Center for Reparation Research is thrilled to launch this International Reparation Debate Competition. This International Reparation Debate Competition that we launched today for secondary schools is one of our most important projects. How do we engage youth on matters of reparatory justice? The change needed in the education system can only be advanced when the youth are engaged and their voices are heard.
Why is reparations so important in and for the Caribbean? Because time comes for justice for our ancestors. Time comes for the Caribbean to insist on the right to development, to be compensated for the violence against our ancestors. So outreach to the young people who have joined this movement is critical.
And this initiative is phenomenal. And you know why? Because it's engaging with young people. And it's young people that I believe, are going to be the future of the reparatory justice movement. The greatest weapon that there is in this whole fight for reparatory justice is the young people of today. I hope this debate spurs a whole new generation of advocates for reparatory justice, and the UK and the EU have got to make amends for the ills of the transatlantic slavery. This is going to be a phenomenal competition.
There is no mass movement that isn't a youth movement. And we certainly want reparations to be a mass movement. So it's really exciting, though, to have a regional stroke international debating competition. And I'm looking forward to your participation as you construct your arguments for and against, remembering that the 10-point plan for reparatory justice is our guiding framework for the areas in which we are demanding compensation, because we certainly want to impact the public opinion and awareness in Europe. So it's fantastic to have the United Kingdom participating as well.
So why is it important for youth to be involved in the reparation movement? Being involved in the reparations movement is critical to youth if one is to know their history so that they can understand why their societies are functioning as they are today. The future of the countries we live in are dependent on the current situation that exists today in our countries. And these current conditions were created by the past, including indigenous genocide, African enslavement, indentureship, and colonization. Being involved in reparations is about seeking justice, seeking a way to reduce inequalities in our own countries and then in the broader world. It's about seeking a more peaceful and balanced world, where global problems are solved in partnerships, not in isolation. I believe the sponsors are hoping this competition will allow our youth to gain knowledge about the past so that as young people, you'll be able to make better decisions in the future and make our countries better places.
We know that we need to understand stories about people that look like us. So the fact that so many of you young people have registered was so encouraged by your enthusiasm and your passion for wanting to enter this debate. It is so important. It's just at the core of who we are, that we need to understand where we come from, understand our true history, and having a debate competition on this particular topic is such an important milestone. To have a real conversation about repair, and the fact that our young people were so articulate with their presentations, and to ensure that we keep educating our young people, because you are the future of us and are the Caribbean's a sustainable future. So congratulations, everybody.
We are looking forward to the debate. Encourage everyone to join the debate. Thank you so much, all.
Where is the justice for the 5 million enslaved Africans trafficked to the Caribbean? Think about it. Chattel slavery didn't just end, it left deep, painful scars across each Caribbean country. The deliberate underdevelopment, the brutal trauma and violence we inherited. It's time to repair this damage so we can build thriving, sustainable economies where young people like us can dream big, achieve more, and live better lives right here in our own home. Do you see why repair matters? Stand with us, join the calls for justice, and sign the petition for reparations at repaircampaign.org/petition.
It's very important that this is understood, because we can't talk about legacies before talking about what left those legacies on our landscape. Enslaved Africans were subjected to the worst atrocities imaginable: kidnapping, storage in filthy barracoons, the Middle Passage, forced drowning as in the case of the slaver Zong, branding with hot iron, including by the church, with SPG being seared into the flesh of those they owned, unrelenting field and factory labor, legal codes that rendered them non-human, and harsh punishments when they resisted enslavement, deportation, dismemberment, hanging, imprisonment, severe flogging, including of women and children. According to Lucille Matherin Mayer, and I quote, "Neither age nor pregnancy exempted women from corporal punishment. Rather, they were laid down in the filthiest place the driver could find for floggings. Child labor was rampant, and women and girls faced sexual violence." Orlando Patterson wrote in his Sociology of Slavery the following: "The sexual exploitation of female slaves by white men was the most disgraceful aspect of Jamaican slave society." Unfortunately, the church was complicit in this crime against humanity. Initially, Christian planters did not think that the African was of theological significance. According to El Sacavaya, and I quote, early English slave law almost totally neglected the enslaved as a subject for religious instruction, as a member of a family, or as a member of society possessing some rights, as the same rights as everyone else.
Did you grow up on Anansi stories? Yep, most of us have. But did you know that Anansi played a major role in our ancestors' survival? So let's talk about it. He's more than just a trickster spider. He was a means of inspiration for resistance.
Anansi's cleverness in outsmarting his rivals mirrored tactics enslaved people used in their daily lives. By pretending to be foolish or inept, a technique known as play fool for catch wise, enslaved people lower their enslavers' expectations and reduce suspicion. These methods, inspired by Anansi, are known as Anansi tactics, or in Twi from Ghana, Anansi Sem. Anansi outwitted powerful animals and even white enslavers using cunning and wit.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the report on the match, or rather the half match that just went on, given the fact that we only had Holy Childhood High School out of Jamaica. Their opponents, Presentation College from Trinidad, unfortunately was not present to engage them. But we as adjudicators, we tried to engage them with some points of information, and we have ascertained an assessment of their presentation, in part owing to how it is that they engage with those questions that we ask them. All right, so the first thing I'd want to speak about is how it is that the first speaker opened, sort of raising a moral question about the fact that if it is that we are to credit as being a substantial contributor to the abolition movement and the process of abolition, if we're to credit white people, or the people from European descent for the abolition of slavery, it really amounts to an infringement on the dignity or the respect, the regard of our enslaved people, our enslaved ancestors. And that it is morally wrong, right? We just want to point out that even if it is that we consider it as being morally wrong, it doesn't really engage with the central question of the motion, of the debate, which is that, people of enslaved people were the primary agents for their own freedom. So whether or not it is moral or immoral to designate either group, be the people of enslaved people rather, or to attribute that responsibility and that label to those who were European colonizers is immaterial. Facts are facts. So just wanted to lay that out clearly. The second thing we'd want to speak about is the seeming, well, first of all, it's a point of commendation, actually, the way the team sort of contextualized and, in a sense, defined what they mean by, to be, what does it mean to be agents for the fight for freedom? And that seems to us to be the fact that, in their estimation, peoples of, enslaved Africans, or formerly enslaved people, then enslaved people at the time, before abolition was granted, would have fought hard and would have engaged in sort of revolutionary acts. We got that fully listed by the third speaker and the second speaker as well. So we felt that that would have constituted them taking agency, them taking sort of ownership over the process that would have, in the estimation of the proposition team here, led to the achievement of abolition, right? Now, we also felt, though, that there are other actors who would have, and other factors, if you will, that would have contributed to the achievement of the achievement of abolition, of the abolition of slavery. So, for example, the acts of whites in Europe, for example, in the European Parliament, people like William Wilberforce, the fact that the economic system was not conducive to the continuation of slavery, it was not profitable anymore. Those are realities that also contributed. We felt that at times the team seemed almost dismissive of those particular considerations have been contributors to the achievement of abolition. We felt, though, that it was strategic of them to have articulated that it was a struggle by enslaved people for their own freedom that led to the economic system deeming, or rather, made the economics of it all not at all profitable. So it became not profitable because of the consistent revolts, because of the consistent struggles and uprisings by enslaved peoples. And so that would have significantly contributed. And of course, the agitation by the slaves themselves, by the enslaved people themselves, would have also contributed to sort of the crafting of a kind of an ethos amongst the white Europeans that led them to recognize the horrors of slavery and the inhumanity of slavery, and ultimately for them to also contribute to the abolition of slavery. All right. So with that said, that clearly, there is no other way but to announce that the team that advances from this match, given that there was only one team, is the team Holy Childhood High School from Jamaica. Congratulations, Holy Childhood High School, on advancing. You advance with 268 points, and all the best going into round 2. This concludes the first day of matches. We would have had 3 matches today. On the 19th of March, we will proceed with another 3 matches. And so we look forward to having you on board and ultimately contributing in the dialogue. The best debater in this match is the second speaker from Holy Childhood High School. Congratulations on that designation.